The former commissioner of the Mississippi Department of Public Safety and also former DEA agent, Marshall Fisher, who has a lifetime of dealing with the problems of drugs, et cetera, et cetera. Good morning, sir. How are you, my friend?
Good morning. How are you, Paul?
I'm good. Listen, let me give you one story here, and I got so many in this stack. It's just been piling up. The data, this was a Fox report. The data is in. It's becoming increasingly clear that the impacts of commercial marijuana industry are even worse than many people thought, particularly for America's young people. New report released by Smart Approaches to Marijuana shows the reality in pot legal states paints a vastly different picture than the common sales pitch of the industry and supporters of legislation. The marijuana industry, which spends billions to lobby elected officials and bankroll legislation referendum campaigns, is following the playbook pioneered by Big Tobacco. They recognize that the road to big profits runs through the heaviest users. As such, they've increased potency of the drug by more than 4 times since 1999, hoping to hook kids while they are young and vulnerable, and the numbers show that it is working. During this whole debate in our state, you and I talked on the air and off the air, and we basically, I'm not surprised by this. Are you?
No, I'm not surprised. We were telling lawmakers this all along. Recently talked to some people out of Oklahoma. They're inundated in Oklahoma with Chinese criminal organizations, Russian organized crime groups. Everywhere it's been tried, it's sort of like socialism. We'll try it this time and it'll work.
Yeah. Well, wait a minute, Marshall. Wasn't one of the assets to doing this? Look, besides helping people who need this and have no other avenue, we will decrease the black market. I mean, this will do away with the illegal trade. Hell, that hasn't happened.
Hasn't happened in any of the states where it's been tried. And I've told you this before. Don't talk to the police. Don't talk to law enforcement about it. Go and talk to people running treatment centers and see drug and alcohol treatment centers and see what they're dealing with. Talk to them about teenagers and young adults who cannot get off of marijuana, which I know the left says, well, no, it's not addicting. Well, and I'm not a scientist, and I'm not nearly as educated as most of these people who deal with drug and alcohol addiction. But that's what they're telling me privately, and they're a lot more liberal thinking than you and I are, Paul.
Well, but the other thing, too, is we're almost talking about, and people have to realize this, we're almost talking about 2 different animals here, because if you're, 60, 70 years old and you have, back in the Vietnam days, you've had some experience with marijuana, this is a new animal out there. The potency is way past what it was there. And we haven't, logically, I would imagine, we haven't reached the pinnacle of that. It keeps getting more and more so. The industry told parents and politicians they wouldn't target kids. Turned out to be false. From Pop-Tarts to Stony Patch Kids, the packaging of edibles laced with high-potency THC almost looks like traditional snacks. And that is not by a coincidence. That is by design.
Well, back in the 80s, the marijuana we were seizing when I was a street agent years ago, probably 3 to 4% THC content, and now it's skyrocketed way above that. And by the way, I was in a meeting with some police chiefs in the metro area and sheriff in Rankin County a couple of weeks ago. And to a man, all the police chiefs are saying their impaired driving arrests are up significantly. And a lot of it is related to cannabis use.
Yeah, when you see somebody acting erratically on a highway right next to you going down the interstate, you never know if, first of all, do they have a legal card? Are they impaired by that? Can they be impaired by marijuana? And again, if the potency is what it is now, even under the checks and balances of medical marijuana, you have to suspect that that person certainly shouldn't be driving.
Well, all I got to say to that is, from where I live every day, if I drive up from Brandon, Mississippi to Ridgeland and take 20 to 55 north, if you don't believe people are driving erratically, make that run at any time of the day or night.
Not surprisingly, between 2017 and 2021, there were there was a 1,375% increase in at-home exposure to marijuana edibles involving children younger than 6 years old. Most minors are driving up the influence of marijuana, too. And the thing that we've seen here is that in states that have medical marijuana, the overdoses, as it says, goes up tremendously. In this particular study, it was well over 1,000%. So do we look at it and say, okay, the benefit we get from people who have pain and have tried all kind of medications, this is an alternative. Is that risk worth everything else that goes up? And I'll have to ask you, when you watch some of these films and videos of places like Portland, Oregon, and San Francisco, or other places in California, or Seattle, Washington, where the homeless situation is just crazy, how much do you think things like marijuana play into that?
Well, it's got to play a significant role. I'm sure some people wouldn't agree with that comment, but I'll answer that with a question. Who wants to live in that environment?
Well, nobody, and a lot of the places where they're now moving in some of the upscale home neighborhoods, and they can't get them off the streets because they have no help from the police department, because the chief of police is being dictated by the mayor to leave them alone and let them command to do anything they want to. Minors have also gravitated. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, here's my problem with some of that. The first role of government is to protect its citizens.
Mm-hmm.
And we're, as much as people tout we're a democracy, we're a constitutional republic. Those people are responsible to us as citizens. They're not doing their jobs on a local scale in some cases, like where you're talking about, in the Seattles and the Portlands, and on a national scale. We're talking about, your segment earlier, we're talking about electric vehicles and gas stoves, and, we're willing to sacrifice, or some people are willing to sacrifice those things, and they're going to help us. They're willing to go the extra mile. We're going to wear masks for 2 years and shelter in place. But we're not willing to shut our borders down to keep people from bringing in not just drugs, the fentanyl that comes in on a daily basis, and not just the health care cost that's going to impact this nation, not just the diseases that God knows where we're getting in, not just military-age males from 160-something different countries that are crossing our border on a daily basis. And there's people that would lead you to believe that none of the migrants are actually bringing drugs across, that it's responsibility of Americans who are distributing narcotics across this great nation. It's all the Americans' fault. People would lead you to believe that. But while the Border Patrol and the Customs and Border Protection people are distracted by migrants coming across, thousands upon thousands on a daily basis, the drugs are coming across. God only knows what terrorists are coming across. Yeah. I mean, we left, how many billions of dollars worth of weaponry. They've got all our technology they can study, and that we left in Afghanistan. First duty of government is to protect its citizens, period.
Let me ask you this. When we come back, I want to ask you this. Was vaping a big deal when you were still at work?
No, sir.
The 2022 study, we'll talk about it when we come back. Let me give this lead in here. Cannabis vaping is now the most popular method of marijuana delivery among adolescents in the United States of America. If your kid is vaping in high school or middle school, if they are, chances are very, very good they are vaping pot within that, and some pretty potent stuff. Back with Marshall Fisher when we return. Marshall Fisher. And again, as I mentioned before, minors have gravitated toward marijuana vaping products engineered to include a near pure form of THC between 2017 and 2020, just in a 3-year period. If you look at some of these numbers, it scares the hell out of us. In just the 12th graders, went from, in 3-year period, a 9.5 to a 22.1 increase. And if you're a 10th grader, in 3 years, and this was in 2020, so it's probably larger than that now, it went from 8.1 to 19.1% of all 10th graders vaping THC. And 8th graders increased 3.0 to 8.1% from just 2017 to 2020. And if you've got marijuana lying around the house and you have a medical marijuana card, you've got a teenager, 12 or I don't know, 12 or 13 years old, or certainly a teenager 13 and above. Don't tell me that that's not on their mind, grabbing a little bit of that and sticking it in a vape. It's just that's the world we live in, Marshall.
Well, Paul, recent annual surveys show that middle school age children don't even have to leave their house to get drugs anymore. And when you're talking about the vaping, another thing that comes to mind to me is the CBD topicals that are out there. We've got geniuses out there telling people right now that these topicals, in some cases, can reach up to 30%, are okay to rub on your skin. And people don't realize, even though somebody might have a title and a position, that they're out there telling people that these topicals are safe. They're not safe. Even the fentanyl. I mean, we've got fentanyl on the street that's affecting officers when they make traffic stops. But let me just call your attention to one more thing that the public needs to know. These social media sites, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, WhatsApp, Signal, all those things, they're used on a daily basis. They're being exploited by the cartels to put drugs on the street. People that aren't paying attention to their teenagers at home need to realize that they're scoring drugs this way. You can't get anything off the internet, no matter how much it looks like something safe. It's not safe. Here in our area, the New Orleans Field Division of the Drug Enforcement Administration recently participated in a nationwide takedown. But just in our area here alone, they had 22 investigations in the four-state area. That's Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, and Louisiana. They arrested 81 people, 147,000 fentanyl pills, 63 pounds of fentanyl powder, 318 pounds of meth, 630 firearms, nearly $1 million in assets and cash seized. The fentanyl powder and pill seizures alone would equate to 1.6 million deadly doses of fentanyl. Yeah. Now, that is enough to kill half of the population of the state of Mississippi. And what I want to point out here, that's just what they seized. That's what they seized. We don't know how much gets missed on a daily basis.
It's not too hard to draw this line also. If a child is getting this on a regular basis within the house with legalized marijuana, and if that supply is cut off, then he or she is going to go outside, and the marijuana on the streets, and you just said it a few seconds ago, and it's happening more and more every single day, that marijuana is laced with fentanyl in a lot of cases. So the danger just increases.
The danger has increased.
Marshall, where do you think we go from here as legalizing medical marijuana? What do we do in the state of Mississippi? What do you hear? Because I sincerely believe that if we had an initiative process as flexible as we did before it was struck down, that we would have it on the ballot. And there would be enough money poured in here by the millions and millions of dollars that it would probably pass as far as recreational marijuana.
Once that horse was out of the barn, there was no stopping it. There was just way too much money behind it. I encourage people, including lawmakers, to go talk to Dr. Mahmoud El Soli at Ole Miss. You're familiar with him. He's probably unquestionably the world's expert on cannabis. I've talked to him personally, one-on-one, face-to-face, when I was still working, saying, Doc, if you tell me this is a good thing, I'll go away and shut up. And he had two of his assistants there with him who have more degrees than I could wrap around my house. Two ladies that were in tears saying, Mr. Fisher, if you can have any impact on this.
I spent nearly $500,000, over 7,000 classroom hours. And
I'm sorry, go ahead. Uh-oh.
That's all right. And please, if you have any impact on this, try to stop it. This is a bad thing for our state. It's a bad thing for our country. I encourage people to go talk to Dr. El Soli, and I had a couple of individuals tell me that they did. I'm not going to call names. When I ran into him, I said, what did he have to say? They said, well, he's real opinionated. And I thought, well, I suspect that he is.
Yeah. All right, we're out of time. Let me leave you with a headline on Fox this morning in large fonts. Voters' remorse. Blue state survey shows majority want to recriminalize drugs. Quote, we made an enormous mistake. This is from blue states. Marshall, thank you, sir. Never give up the fight. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.